Hello creatures, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about writing stamina, something I'm really excited to talk about since Camp NaNoWriMo is right around the corner. I feel like this topic is really overlooked in the writing community when it comes to big projects, and that can be whether it's an academic thesis, a novel, or these writing challenges that pop up here and there throughout the year. Writing stamina is something really important for these bigger projects, one, to keep us from burning out, and two, to keep us productive. When you think about writing stamina, I think it's easiest to compare it to like marathon running. So when you sit down and you write a book and you're working on a written project for a really long period of time, just like a marathoner is running for a really long period of time, they don't get up off the couch one day and say, well, I'm going to run a marathon, and 2 or 3 days later just do it flawlessly without any preparation or practice or training. And the same is true for people who write books and 100-page thesis. It's really hard to just get up and they don't just write it in 1 or 2 sittings and then they're done. They have to practice sitting and writing for long periods of time, practice sitting and doing the research without getting distracted. Today we're going to be talking about ways that we can improve our writing stamina so that we can tackle these longer projects better with a lower chance of getting burnt out. So we're going to tackle this in 2 sections. The first is addressing the quality of our writing and how focused we are, and the second will be addressing the duration of our writing and how long we can sit still in one spot. So for the first part, the quality of our writing, all you have to do is set up shop in your normal writing area or your main writing area and grab something to write with. So this is my desk. This is where I do the majority of my writing nowadays, and I have just this little memo pad, and what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to give ourselves some sort of writing goal. I'm a big fan of time goals right now, so my writing goal was to write for an hour and a half. You might be using a word count goal, so your goal might be to write 1,000 words. Whatever it is, give yourself a goal and write it on the top of this memo pad. Next, we're going to write the time we start. So whenever I started this on the first day, I wrote 10:10 p.m. That is the time that I started writing. I'm not really a morning person. That's just whenever I'm feeling my most creative. And then every time you get distracted, write down the time it happened and what happened. So for example, on my list at 10:12 p.m., I have written down that a cat climbed on my keyboard. That was a distraction that took me away from writing for just a moment, but we want to tag all of those moments that took us away from our writing project so that we can have an overall view of how often what is distracting us. So do that for your whole writing session, and then at the end, write the time you finished, and then write how many words you wrote. I'm using words. If you're doing like a thesis, you can do bullet points, you can do scenes of your story, however you want to measure it. I think words is a really accurate way to measure productivity versus time whenever it comes to writing, only because it measures how much of the product is there. So that's just what I personally like to do. And then I tallied up all of my distractions at the end. So at the end, I had 17 distractions. And then you look at these distractions and we're going to pull out the ones that are similar, and we're sort of going to group them together in bunches. So for example, of my 17 distractions in this hour and a half, 10 of them were for my phone. So then we're going to look at those. I have 10 distractions from my phone, and we're going to think, how can I address that? Now the phone thing, I think there's 2 big solutions to getting your phone away from you while you're writing. And the first one is to shut it off, put it away, store it somewhere else. Almost nobody wants to hear that. A lot of us are really lax with our writing and we do it for fun. We don't do it to ground ourselves from our electronics. So if you're really serious and you don't want the phone distraction at all, that's definitely a way to go. They have apps that lock your phone now. I personally use Forest. I know that's really popular, but you plant a tree and the tree grows while the timer ticks down for however long you set it. And while that tree is growing, if you go out of the app and use your phone in any other way, it kills your tree, and then the dead tree stays in your little garden to make you feel guilty about it forever. So you can use that for your writing session if you want. The second way to address it, which is what I prefer to do, is to give yourself designated phone checking times. So instead of checking my phone whenever I think about it and checking it whenever it goes off, I made a habit of checking my phone every 15 minutes. Now, if you're writing for an hour and a half, then checking your phone every 15 minutes is 5 distractions. So I had 10 phone distractions. If I start doing this, I'm eliminating 5 phone distractions. So that would bring me down to 12 distractions in an hour and a half instead of 17. And that's sort of the method behind correcting the quality of our writing sessions, is we're going to take away as many of these little distractions and interruptions as we can. So now that I've grouped together the biggest section of my distractions, we're going to go through and see what other kinds of things we have. So like the cat on the keyboard, I can't do much about that unless I wanted to lock them out of the room, and I wasn't that bothered by it, so I'm just going to let that one go. I had a moment at 10:46 where I noticed my battery was going to die on my laptop, and I was really concerned about it. And it's funny in hindsight because I seen that my battery was low and I was like, oh, I have to go get my charger, but my battery was on 20%. So I wrote down that that was a distraction I had, but I didn't get up to get it. I told myself that whenever I finished writing what I was working on, then I can get up and get it. And then I had a 5-minute window between 10:57 and 11:02 where I went up, I got my charger, I got a water because I ran out of a drink, I went to the bathroom, I grabbed a snack from the kitchen, and I sat back down. So it was just a 5-minute break. That cluster of having to do things all one right after another indicated that that's where I need to have a break. That's where in my writing process I got so antsy that I needed to get up and I had a lot of things I wanted to do really quickly and have a break, just a short break, and then I sat back down to write. Coincidentally, that was at 10:57, which was 47 minutes into my hour and a half writing, which means it was about halfway through. So what I learned from that is every 45 minutes, I'm going to start scheduling myself breaks to take a minute away from my writing so that I don't get too overwhelmed. My next distraction was to change the music. It took 4 minutes, and the reason it took so long is because I had to close YouTube and I had to open up Spotify and then find like a playlist that I wanted to listen to. So an easy way to eliminate that would be to just have Spotify open on an extra tab in the background on my computer, just there in case I need to change it. So as you're going through this list, what we're doing is we're looking for ways to address different types of distractions. So like with the phone, by checking your phone every 15 minutes, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, that's not too long for them to wait for a response. It gives me time to get the checking my phone out of my system during my writing, and it also lessens my distractions and interruptions. So other things that we can pull off of my personal list was I needed my charger and I needed a water bottle. So things that I immediately note that I can pull off and fix really easy from my list is that I needed a charger and I needed a water bottle and I needed to change the music. Those are 3 things that I can do before I start writing. So I can grab an extra water bottle and I can make sure that my laptop is plugged in and on my desk before I even sit down to write, and that eliminates those distractions. So what these are will be very different for every person. Maybe you already have it in your mind to sit with your charger and your laptop, and that's not something that would ever happen to you, but you'll have other distractions that are very personal to you. Also, how many distractions you want to take away and correct is also up to you. If you write for an hour and you have 10 distractions and you take away 2, that's great. That's 2 less distractions, and that is more quality time writing. Or you can try to attack every distraction you can. I tried to address every reason that I got up that was addressable. So like things like the bathroom, like I can't just not go to the bathroom whenever I need to. So I scheduled myself a 10-minute break right in the middle, and then I did the whole thing again. So the next day I flipped to a new page and I did it one more time, and the reason I did it again was to test and make sure that the ways that I had to address my distractions actually addressed the problem. So I started at 11 a.m. and I ended at 12:32 p.m. So I wrote for just a little over an hour and a half. I had 4 distractions for my phone, and one of them I wrote phone and music, so I checked my phone and I changed the music in the same minute. And then I had a scheduled 10-minute break where I stepped away from my work, I watched a YouTube video, that's what I wrote down, and then I went back to my work. So I went from having 17 distractions in an hour and a half to having 4 distractions in 1 scheduled break, which is very different, and my productivity levels reflected that. I had written, during that second session, I had written 1,793 words, which is almost 300 words more. It was 19 words or something shy of 300 words more. So just taking out those little things that catch your attention and saying, hey, you know what, instead of checking my phone every time it goes off, I'm going to check my phone every 15 minutes. Something as simple as that kept my creative juices flowing and kept me writing. The same with grabbing an extra water bottle. So I always have to be drinking something. I get really distracted if I'm thirsty. I'm drinking things throughout the entire day. So whenever I sit down to write now, I sit down with a drink and then I sit down with an additional water bottle or bottled tea for whenever I finish that drink. So those are things that are really personal to me, and I hope that you can do this method to find things that are personal to you. So the other thing I have to say about writing quality, I know is going to be really hard for some people to hear, but it's pertaining to breaks and taking breaks. And a lot of people really push, sometimes you just need a break, and that's true. Sometimes you need to get up and walk away. But when you're sitting and writing and you feel the urge to take a break, you have to ask yourself two questions. The one is, do you need a break? And the second is, do you deserve a break? And if you can't say yes and give a very good reason why to either of those, then maybe you shouldn't get up quite yet. So I see this as a pitfall for a lot of people who do these bigger challenges like NaNoWriMo, where they'll write maybe 300 or 400 words. They'll say, okay, it's time for a break, and they'll step away, but they don't have like a structure to how their break is going to work, when they're going to come back to writing. They just think, oh, I'll finish it later, and then they never come back to it. And that might seem like a duration problem. I think it has more to do with the quality of the work that you're doing during your writing session than it does the duration. For example, if your goal is to write 500 words a day and you wrote 450 words and you're feeling like you're itching for a break, just write the last 50 words and you're done. You deserve a break. You hit your goal. If your goal is to write for 2,000 words a day and you hit 1,000, that's a lot of words. That's a pretty big milestone. Take a break if you need one. You definitely deserve it, but then give yourself a time that you're going to go back and start. Say, I'm going to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to take a half an hour break and watch an episode of a show, and then I'm going to sit back down and I'm going to write, and hold yourself accountable to that. And the reason that has to do with quality is because whenever you're answering those questions of, do I need a break and how long of a break do I need, it sort of reflects what your goals are for the project and where you are. So if your goals are to write 2,000 words and you've written 500, then you're not at a break yet. You really need to keep pushing yourself, but that's the point of these writing challenges, is to push yourself harder than you normally would. So take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, but don't be so kind to yourself that you hurt your own progress, if that makes sense. All right, so now we're going to move on to the second part of our writing stamina training, and that is to focus on the duration of our writing sessions. And the baseline for this, for correcting the duration of your writing sessions, is really to just get yourself used to it. So this time we're going to use weightlifting as an example. If your goal is to be able to squat 300 pounds, you don't get under the squat rack under 300 pounds on a bar and try to lift it and get upset and quit when you don't. You don't go back to the gym every day and try to lift 300 pounds and then just get mad at yourself when you can't do it. That's not how you address the problem. So whenever we're doing our writing stamina training, we're going to pick our end goal first, and then we're going to start smaller and we're going to work towards it. So if your end goal is to write for an hour a day, or if it's to write 6 hours a day, whatever the goal is that you have, start with just a small portion of that. So maybe start writing 15 or 20 minutes a day if you're new to this and you really are feeling overwhelmed. And write 20 minutes a day until that feels like nothing. So write 20 minutes a day for a week. Maybe it's 2 weeks. Maybe it takes you a month to really get into that habit of doing something daily. And for some people, it is really hard to find the time. So do that until it becomes very easy, and then add a little bit more time. So if you're writing 20 minutes a day and you reach the point where it's so easy that you're just going to really quick write 20 minutes, check it off your daily checklist, and then you're good to go, then up it to 30 minutes, up it to 40 minutes. Whenever it gets really easy to do those smaller increments, then you can move on to an hour. And if you do that system of writing 20 minutes a day for a month, and then writing 40 minutes a day for a month, or however long it takes, then you're only 20 minutes away from that hour a day goal. If your goal is 6 hours a day, then maybe start with writing 2 hours at a time, taking a long break, writing another 2 hours until it feels like those 2-hour sessions are nothing. Then you can add more time in, and it works for almost every writing goal, I think. So even though that is the baseline of how we sort of increase our writing stamina in regards to duration, there are things you can do to increase your writing motivation, which is going to make you want to sit and write for longer. And I think that those things sort of go hand in hand. So I know that I was saying earlier to be a little bit hard on yourself and to really question whether or not you need or deserve breaks, but now I'm sort of coming at it from the opposite end of the spectrum. And if you are taking on a big writing task, whether it is an academic paper or writing a book or a writing challenge, I think you should treat yourself just for taking on the task. So a lot of people think, like, I finished this thing, I deserve some sort of reward. And I think people deserve rewards for starting big projects, for taking the challenge on. And if you start that rewarding system early, then it's going to keep you motivated to do it. For example, if you are participating in Camp NaNoWriMo in April, which is a little bit less than a month away, then what is something you can get for your comfort or for the comfort of your writing area, your bubble that you like to write in, that will help make you want to sit and write and make you feel comfortable in that situation. So one of my things is I really like candles. As you can see, I have a little candle in the back of my desk. That one smells like sweet apples, and it was a gift and I love it. It's like my favorite candle. So that might be something, if you really like to burn candles and you love scents, maybe you need to get yourself a candle for your writing event or for your project that you can burn while you're writing. Or maybe you have a certain drink that you really like to get that comes in like a bottle or a can and you get it every so often. Go out to Sam's Club and buy yourself a case. And whenever you sit down to work on that writing project, grab one out of the case. Do these little things to help you feel comfortable whenever you sit down and write. Because even though we're trying to attack distractions and interruptions, if your writing area is uncomfortable, then you're not going to want to sit there and write anyway. And it would be pointless to fight the distractions if you don't actually want to be there. So make your writing space and your writing process something you want to continuously come back to. So other candidates, for example, for things that you can buy for yourself to help with comfort, which helps with your writing duration, is Spotify Premium, fuzzy socks, blankets. Maybe you need a book so that in between writing sessions you can read and get inspiration and do something that you enjoy. Another big one is snacks. I think snacks are really good. Get something that's not greasy or oily that you can eat and write with. I think grapes and jerky are like really good contenders for those because you don't really have any residue on your hands, so it doesn't affect your keyboard at all. Other things you can get could be purely hygienic. Do you want like a bath bomb? Maybe whenever you reach your goal for the week, you'll soak in the tub. Face masks, I really like to write with them on. Maybe you have an essential oil that like really helps you stay focused or really calms you down whenever you get anxious and you want to get up. So you can splurge on those things now. Things that I would really push not to get are things that will be distracting and things that involve other hobbies other than like writing or reading or research. And the best example I can think of this is like video games. So if you think, I'm taking on this big writing project, I deserve a treat, I agree, but getting yourself a video game isn't going to help you with this big writing project. It's only going to distract you. It's only going to make you want to play that instead. So keep that in mind whenever you're picking a treat for yourself. And I'm not saying if you're writing a book, then don't invest in video games, because I think that is another great hobby and I personally really enjoy them. But I am saying if you're treating yourself for taking on a writing challenge, then make sure what you're treating yourself with is appropriate to the writing challenge. So these methods of addressing the quality of your work and the duration of your work are only really the beginning. So our lives change chapter to chapter, and whenever I say that, I mean your sports and schedule and classes and whatever this season or this semester are going to be different next season and next semester. And as those things change, as the people you're seeing and the things you're doing throughout the day change with each season, your available times and your available distractions are going to change too. So the last time I did this was probably at the beginning of October whenever I was getting ready for NaNoWriMo, and I was really just getting used to writing for long periods of time. And now here I am doing it again in March. This is actually my first Camp NaNoWriMo next month, but I am planning on starting graduate school in the fall, and I can easily see myself doing this again at the beginning of the fall whenever I'm getting ready to write like my thesis paper. So it is something that I think you should do and then check and then do until you find a good system and something that really works for you. And then after that, you should do it once or twice a year to make sure that you are still staying as productive as possible. Unless you're the kind of writer who sits in a room solitary with the door shut, who doesn't ever have to change the radio, who doesn't ever have to go to the bathroom, who never finds themselves thirsty, and who always knows exactly what word to write next. Unless that's you, then there's always room for improvement. There's always room to cut out one or two more distractions. There's always space to do something to make your writing space more comfortable. There's always something that we could do to help improve our writing stamina. It's something that I'm constantly doing, and I hope that my method for doing it also helps you guys. Thanks for watching, stay creative, and don't forget to subscribe.